Welcome to Free Range. Penny Bradley is a veteran of the space Black Ops. Born in 1955, she was kidnapped at age 4, mind fractured, and psi weaponized at Langley, Virginia. Penny served on Mars as a pilot in the Mars War and was transferred to Noctufin in 1990, which is part of the German space program and is also known as the Dark Fleet. At that time, Penny was serving as a navigator on a freighter. Penny Bradley's memories of life in the Black Ops were activated by an NSA agent in 2013, restoring a whole lifetime of mind fracture, programming, and military use in space by a faction who speaks German. She has reintegrated 31 altars using Native American shamanic soul fragment retrieval. Here is your host, Gail of Gaia, with her guest, Penny Bradley.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is, wherever you are. This is Gail of Gaia, and this is Free Range, and we graze on wild ideas here. And I have with me today, I'm delighted to have Penny Bradley, SuperSoldier, and someone who knows a lot about a lot of different things. And today we're going to focus on Mars and her experiences there and what she can tell us about Mars. And I remember one of the first things she told me was it may appear red from in space, but when you are up close and personal, it's brown. Isn't that right?
It is, yes. The reason that it looks brown up close and red from a distance is because it has a really high iron content in the dirt.
Oh, okay.
There are places where it has obviously been hit with lightning strikes and the iron has melted out of the dirt and formed little balls. And it's little balls of iron. And some of them will be rusty on the outside. Most of them are not. And they show up in some of the rover photos. That's what they're calling blueberries. It's actually little iron balls from where lightning has struck.
I'll be darned. So that's a misconception that it's red per se, but there's a reason for it.
I'm going to be showing some art today, and it was done for me by VN Chronicler, and his real first name is Mark. And Mark had it in his head that Mars was red, and I could not beat that out of his head with a baseball bat, so
I've been there.
keep that. He also thought that all Germans were blonde, so that was something else I could not beat out of his head with a baseball bat. So, yeah.
Cognitive dissonance, what people believe.
It's exactly. It's cognitive dissonance, it's prejudices, it's things that people have popped into people's minds and they've just stuck. And you can look at me, since I've been an adult, I've always had mouse brown hair with red highlights. So you put me out in the sun and it glows orange. Like
it gets red. Color. Yeah, mine used to do that too. That's how and then
I'm old and I have gray streaks, but where it's not gray, it still does that. So,
I turned myself blonde because of the gray. So, anyway,
do what makes you feel pretty.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway.
The last time I dyed my hair, it fell out and.
Ooh.
It came back in really, really, really fragile. and I've been afraid to do anything to it. But I had dyed it blue, and it was really fun.
Yeah, I saw a woman that she must have had blonde hair first, and she dyed it. She had a real light blue. It was really pretty. It was very pretty. Very different, but very pretty.
The blue looked really good with my skin color, so it was like, yeah, I like this. And then it just all fell off. So,
well, back to Mars. People don't live on they don't live on the surface, do they?
No, it's too cold at night.
How cold does it get?
It gets, in Fahrenheit, it gets to about 20 below every night, all year round. And that's at the equator. It's colder at the poles.
Oh, wow. Because I lived in Wisconsin, and we had 20 below many times, but only during the winter.
It's it's every night.
That's pretty cool.
And, it's every night. Every night. It's cold like that. And the local wildlife has adapted to it, or they would have died long ago. Including the local life forms, they've either adapted by going underground, or they've adapted by having extra layers of insulation on the outside. Or they're cold-blooded like the reptilians and insectoids. Mars used to have a full ecology just like on Earth.
Wow. What happened?
There were great oceans on top that are now underground and frozen. The water's still there, it's just underground. And what happened, there were two things that happened. One was there was a planet that came too close, and there was an exchange of both dirt and air between the two planets, and Mars lost more than it gained. And the other was there was a nuclear war, and we know that because of the isotopes that were left in the northern hemisphere. And that was before the Germans nuked the native wildlife. So both of these are in ancient history. And the ecology is what survived both incidences.
Wow. Why did the Germans nuke the...
When the Germans got there, every square inch was already owned by somebody else. And they had a lease from the Draco. And the Draco terms were not exactly favorable. And where the Draco gave them was not a good place for humans to live. It was really hard to defend. It was really hard to air condition, which meant keep it warm at night. It was hard to secure it against the other life forms in the area. And they found several places that were much more suitable to humans. And the only legal way to get it was to remove the owners.
Ooh. Which were the Dracos?
No,
Somebody else?
It was the Mars native raptors, and they look just like out of Jurassic Park, except they have longer arms like humans. And they have 200 IQs, and they're telepathic, and they have claws this long or longer that are razor sharp. In an unarmed battle, they will win every time. Oh, did I mention that they're from 7 to 9 feet tall? In the northern hemisphere, they're green. In the southern hemisphere, they're brown. And at the equator, you get both.
And they have a 200 IQ.
They are in their Stone Age now. They had survived both events and had crawled back up to the Neolithic stage when the Germans nuked them. And the Germans were using proton bombs so that it would kill the organic life and leave the buildings habitable. They just had to wait to move in.
Wow. Now, was this the Nazis or was this the...
The Nazis were all left on Earth.
Okay, this was the aristocracy.
This was the German aristocracy had come to Mars. They had established a base in Antarctica, and they had established a base on the moon, and they were coming to Mars. And they were on Mars about 1960.
Wow.
So we're talking, they've been there a long time. Last count I heard from Mars, which was about 2014, there were 10 million Germans on Mars.
Wow, that's a lot.
We're not talking about a small population.
And they live underground.
And they live underground. Some of the other groups, and this is just the Germans, some of the other groups have taken craters and put caps over them, and they're living inside of those.
Like a dome house?
Like a dome city.
Dome city. Oh, okay.
Usually they have factories inside there. And your viewers don't want to know what the factories are for. It's pretty dark. The entire space program is based on slavery and human trafficking and turning humans into cyborgs and selling them to ETs. And what they are getting back in exchange is technology that the ETs consider to be toys, because we're a child race and they don't want to give us anything dangerous.
Well, look what they're doing with what they do know.
Exactly. I mean, look at Earth. You know, we have from a third to half the population kills baby girls just because they're not baby boys on a regular and ongoing basis. What are those people going to do with technology? I mean, I've been told that by ETs.
Mm-hmm.
We're not an unknown quantity. They've been watching us for a long time. They know exactly what stage we're at. That we have enough technology to be a threat to them, and not enough wisdom to even know what we're doing. Basically like toddlers playing with matches.
Well, and the sad part of it is that that's not the general population for the most part. Those are the elite groups, the billionaires and trillionaires and governments and so on.
Oh well.
Don't you agree?
I've been listening to the mess about COVID on Facebook, and I'm wondering if the general population is any better.
Oh, well, I go out and I see people with masks on and all kinds of things, and it's disturbing.
So, Mars. Mars started off with a war started by the Germans that lasted basically from 1964 until 1990 in the Northern Hemisphere. In the Southern Hemisphere of Mars, that war is still ongoing, because the raptors there refused to sign treaties. There was a real problem with the Germans not honoring the treaties in 1990, give or take 5 years. And these are Earth years. When I give a date, it's Earth time. So people can have an idea of where it was in their time frame. And in that time frame, the Germans and the Draco had signed treaties with both the Mars Mantids and the Mars Raptors. And the Germans found some piece of ancient technology that they wanted really, really bad, and it was being held by, I believe it was the Mantids. And they were basically told no. And so they sent in a battalion of Americans to take this. And this is what Randy Kramer calls the Battle of the Blender, because they got into this site and they had to go through this tunnel, and they were basically shredded as they went in.
Oh my God.
And it was my personal commander who had ordered it. And I witnessed my commander being gutted by his commander, who was a Draco, for having no honor, for not honoring the treaty that the Draco had signed with us. So there were consequences to the man that did this. After the Draco left the room, the rest of us took this guy and dumped him into regen, and he was a lot more humble after that. But this is the state of the stupidity that was going on. Whatever the tech item was, the Germans thought it was worth violating the treaties. And the others were not going to part with it at all. There are still issues with both the Germans and the Americans violating the rights of the native races to get tech. Stuff that these races, it's surviving items from the past that these races have honored as holy relics. And so the Earth humans are going through and basically trying to get all of the stuff they can find, because nobody gives them advanced tech willingly. After all, what do we do with it? So,
yeah,
what we have on Mars are the Draco have a base. They have a whole section of territory, and they have a small colony there. We have Anunnaki
really.
in a city, and they have several million in a underground city in the southern hemisphere. And they're mostly the blue-collar ones that on Earth we call tall whites or Nordics, but they're Anunnaki. There is a race of surviving humans who we always called them the Mars natives, and they resemble American Apache Indians. They have that brown gold cast to their skin, and they're about 7 feet tall because there's less gravity there, and we don't know what they eat because they live underground, and when they see us coming, they run. They wear either black or blue robes that look very much like what the ancient Hindu people wore. And their language is very close to Sumerian, which by the way, so is the language of the Anunnaki. So
Very much like Sumerian?
Very much like Sumerian.
Because someone told me once that the Sumerian tablets and all that was a reptilian group. Is that correct?
I've heard the Anunnaki called reptilians on Earth, but when you see them, they look like us, but they're 7 to 9 feet tall, and they have very white skin when they're born. And the royals abuse Ormus, So the ones that abuse silver end up a blue-gray color, and the ones that abuse copper-based end up a green color.
Wow.
And their eyes start off usually as bunny red because basically they're albino. And some of them have bright blue eyes or gold, metallic gold, or bright green eyes. But they, what they look like is a 7 or between 7 and 9 feet tall Viking, muscular, usually curly hair, but albino. And they have psi abilities that you have absolutely no doubt that they are not human. And because they modified us over the years, the human tendency is to just fall to your knees and worship.
That's the Anunnaki, right?
That's the Anunnaki. They call themselves Shahami, and I don't understand why people think they're reptilians, but as far as I know, the only evidence that they have for any of these beings or their hybrids on Earth to be reptilians is the testimony of Arizona Wilder, who admitted herself that she was on drugs at the time. So,
well, they say that we have a reptilian brain.
We do.
So if the Anunnaki were involved in the genetic modification of humanity, where did they get that from?
Humanity, actually Homo erectus, got the reptilian brain as part of a prior deal that there were humans and reptilians both here on Earth, and they were fighting all the time. And so a deal was made to make a hybrid race between them and leave the place to them. And that was Homo erectus. And the Shahami got here. They had trouble breathing the nitrogen atmosphere. And so they created a slave race out of the Homo erectus. And that's us. And they went through probably from the archaeological and anthropological record, they probably went through 8 or 9 different versions of us before they got us.
Wow.
So they went through several tries, but the Bible says we were created to serve God. That's a polite way of saying you were made to be a slave. I mean, our own holy books tell us this. It's not like it should be anything new. We are told right from the beginning, we created you to do our work. So that shouldn't be a shock to anybody. But
why were we given a soul or spirit?
Because we're a living being. Because consciousness goes all the way into electrons, neutrons, and protons.
Okay.
So if you're in a meat suit, you have a soul.
That's just the way it goes. Well, it was my understanding.
That's the way this whole universe operates. Even the ETs have souls, no matter what preachers tell you.
Well, where did our souls come from originally?
This entire universe is based on consciousness. The soul came from that.
So I guess what I'm getting at is there's talk about source or prime creator. So I would make the assumption that that part of us, the spiritual part of us, is from prime creator, and the Anunnaki.
My understanding is that every so often there is a new timeline created, usually birthed, and that the mother usually dies in the process because it strips her of her chi and it just creates a new universe and that the life comes with it. That consciousness is, the timeline itself is conscious. And what people are calling source is just our own timeline's consciousness.
Interesting. I'll have to think about that one. Never heard anybody never heard anybody put it that way before. That's interesting.
Yeah. So back to Mars. Okay. The first place on Mars that was settled, they called it Prima, or first, prime. And they called it Ares because that's what they called it in German. That's the ancient name for the planet Mars, is Ares. So this was originally a military base called Ares Prima. Now, I don't remember exactly where it is, but I keep looking at Mons Olympus on the map. So I'm going, if I had to put my finger on something, I would say it's in there. Now, most of it is underground. There is an opening that allows ships to come in, and it's faced with a force field that keeps out the sandstorms and invaders. And that entire level of the base is just for the ships. Now, these can be spaceships, these can be planes, these can be shuttles. And all of them are in use on Mars and have been since the beginning. When I was brought there in 1964, they already had multiple layers. And I was taken to a lair that housed children that were going to school. They call it Schule, which is school in German. So I was 9 years old when I got there. I came with a dozen other kids. We were all put in a dorm together, boys and girls. We were used to having our heads shaved and not having a parent figure. So we had to learn how to take care of our clothes. We had to learn how to present ourselves in a military fashion. And we had to learn to follow their regulations, which were very different from what Langley had imposed on us. So all of us had gone through 5 years at Langley. We were the class of 64 from Langley CIA base. So we came, we did not speak German. We were immediately put into immersion with the German kids in their Schule, which was taught Prussian style, which for Americans, that means you were sitting at a small wooden desk with a seat, and you had a slate that you wrote on with chalk. You said everything out loud, and if you said it wrong, the teacher smacked the back of your hand with a ruler. And it had a metal strip at the end. This is the way Schule was taught.
Wow.
So
how cruel.
It's the way they did things. And they got the results they were looking for. They were not about a group of independent individuals. They were about a military that worked as a unit. So these were kids of soldiers on a military base being taught to be soldiers. Or they were kids like me who basically were enlisted from the time we got there. And they were training us. Now, to their credit, the Germans wanted us educated. They wanted us to be able to read and write, to do math, to understand astrophysics, to understand exobiology, exopolitics, and they taught us self-defense before they taught us our job. So we were completely educated. By the time I graduated at 19, so 10 years of Shula, I had the equivalent of an AA in California. And I was trained to be a pilot as well.
Wow. So you got to fly spaceships?
Yeah, that was my job.
That's
So,
fun. I would think that'd be fun.
It was. That's the one thing I miss the most being on Earth, is being able to fly the ships. The smaller ship like I used on Mars, it was basically an F-15 with a plasma engine instead of a jet engine. And my job was to be basically in low Mars orbit and use a computer scan to find raptor nests.
Oh my.
And when I found a small raptor nest, I was supposed to take it out. If it was a large one, like a village, I was supposed to call for backup, and we were to take it out. And I was equipped with some pretty major weapons. Basically tomahawks. That would be the Earth equivalent of what I was equipped with. I also had lasers and a small nuke or two. And, we were in a war. And it was 1974 when I was put into a plane with orders and told, this is where you are supposed to go over. And most of the time, that was my job, was to hunt for raptor nests. I could also be assigned ghoul duty, which was going and finding human remains after a battle. And some of them might be pretty old and stinky. And my job was to just bring them back and let the techs figure out if they could be revived or not. Remember, we had regen tanks that could bring you back from the dead for up to 4 months.
Up to 4 months?
Up to 4 months.
The body's decaying at that point, isn't it?
Uh-huh. All it takes is some of the DNA to still be viable. Yeah.
So you had an entire crew on your ships then?
No.
Or you were by yourself?
I was by myself on a ship. I had a chip inserted into my brain, and the outer part of the chip would be behind my left ear. And it looked a lot like a Bluetooth, except that it was actually embedded into my skull instead of just wrapped around. And it connected me to the ship's computer on my ship. And later on, when I was transferred to the actual military off Mars, it still connected me to the ship's computer for the ship I was on. But the other job that they gave us, my unit was called Valkylen, the Valkyries, because they would sometimes take us and time travel us back into Earth history to rescue people who were dying in battles or from the plague.
Oh, really? Wow.
In German history and Celtic history, and it goes back 600-700 years. In the legends, you have the legends of Valkyrie or Morrigan, who come into battle and kill people. Yeah, scary stuff. especially when you figure out that they're actually people from today's German military in space coming back in time, and they're taking people who have been wounded and they know are going to die. And the most efficient way to do that is to just take their heads.
Oh,
Because you decapitate them with the laser and you don't have blood all over, but you have their head. You take it, you put it in a regen tank, and it regrows the rest of the person back with full memory. And if you don't go too far back in time, you can still talk to each other. You know, because languages change over time.
uh-huh.
So,
That's amazing.
well, the Germans had asked the Americans to give them 140,000 Americans every year. And their hope was to be able to integrate some of these people into their colonies. Well, the CIA shot us up with ET-DNA, so that made that impossible. The Germans had to find genetic diversity somehow. So this was how they did it. They went back and they got German tribal people and or Celtic who were closely related and brought them to these colonies.
Hmm.
So,
Were they made into slaves?
no.
No?
They were made into colonists.
Okay.
And they considered the first few colonies were in Draco Empire. And they have a little bit different deal. But the rest of them were just outside Draco territory. And those are called the Free German States. Or we called them Das Bundes, which translates to Federation.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah. It was the Federation of Free German States. And what were they free of? They were free of Earth's bankers.
Nobody likes those bankers.
No, the Germans really hate those bankers.
Mhm.
So,
Human.
now, about the time that I left, so that would be 1990, there was a new capital for the German group. It was moved from Antarctica to Mars, and they called it Neu Berlin, or New Berlin.
New Berlin.
And so that is the capital of the German group. And since then, there was a colony created, I believe it's in Lyra, that they called the planet New Berlin. And it is now the official capital of the entire German group in space. So they were completely out of the solar system. Yeah, well, they kept bases, but they were out. They were leaving because they knew what was going on with all of the propaganda and stuff. They didn't want to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Neither do I, but I'm stuck here. No. Okay.
they had a way out.
Yeah,
So-
really. Hopefully it's all changing. It appears to be
Yeah.
in many ways, but
I have some pictures that
yes.
my artist drew that I'm going to share with you. And they're not perfect, but they're as close as I could get him to understand them. Oh, share screen. Ah. Okay, this is how Vian Chronicler drew one of the Mars Mantids.
So they have antennas like this.
They have antennae like ants on Earth. The Mantids on Mars are very ant-like. And they have the front, they usually have the front arms up, and the back two pair of legs are used to walk with. They do have wings that they can bring up. And they're called mantids instead of ants because they don't have that tiny separator between the thorax and the abdomen that ants on Earth do.
Oh,
So the body is one chunk like a mantid rather than an ant. But otherwise, they're very ant-like. And they tend to have a cave opening to their hive. And they do operate as a hive, and they're very telepathic. They're almost all female. They have a queen who dominates the hive telepathically and tells everybody what to do.
So they're pretty intelligent, though, right?
They're incredibly intelligent, and they do have space flight. So, see all photos.
So they create spaceships, too.
Yeah. I'm going to have to figure out what I'm doing here with the screen share.
Yeah, I'm going to have to figure mine out, too, because being on a different computer, I don't know how to do it here.
Okay. We're going to have to do this each one at a time.
That's fine. This is so amazing, just thinking that so many people think we don't even, there isn't even any life on other planets, thanks to most religions.
Yeah, they think that here is all there is, and it's not. And now it's not letting me share at all. Okay.
It worked good the first time.
It did. It worked really good the first time. Now it's sitting here saying not responding.
And you're frozen. Your face is you're frozen.
Yeah, that's because it doesn't know which thing to show. If you Zoom meetings, if you close the program, you might lose information. If it closes me out, I will come back.
Okay. Are you closing out right now? Apparently she did close out. Yeah, she's gone for the moment. She'll be back though, so hang on, folks. I'm not sure why that happened, but here we go. She's back.
Hello.
There you are.
This is crazy. And you're still recording. Good. Okay.
Yeah, it's still going. So I know that one picture where they have giant spiders on
Oh, you want to see the
Mars, too.
spiders?
Yeah, I don't like spiders, but I can't imagine seeing one that big. Are
Okay.
they aggressive?
Yes, they're very aggressive.
So you better have a weapon, right?
Yes, and they're fast. We have been known to hunt them too, so fair is fair. The Mantids keep them as pets, like we use hunting dogs. But they
Really?
have two sets of mandibles, one above the other. This is supposed to be me, but the hair is too light. I did wear a blue uniform rather than a black one. In Noctufin, the usual officer uniform is black or dress whites. And in this particular case, when I was on Mars, they told me that I was U.S. Navy on loan to them, and they made me wear blue.
Oh, I like blue better than black anyway,
Yeah.
for what it's worth.
The Russians that were there wore green. But yeah, they're big. And when we would be out in the field, if we got hungry, we would hunt down a spider and cook it, and they taste like crab.
Really?
So we were hunting them as much as they were hunting us. But I would occasionally be assigned to catch a mantid for interrogation. And they had this usual thing, they would tuck inside a cave and call a spider. And I fell for it too many times.
Oh my gosh.
So I can tell you from experience that the venom of these things burns like fire, but not for very long. So I'm going to see what I can do about showing the others.
It doesn't make you die.
It does make you die. I was put into the
does?
regen tank.
Oh, so it's a venom then.
The venom is pretty nasty. Okay. It looks like it's going to behave for a little bit.
Now, when something like that happens, and you're put into the regen tank, and you come back, do you recall the event that happened when you were killed?
Yes.
And
I have a blank spot for the time I was died until I come out of the tank. So I don't know who got me or how or what, but yeah. I have full memory up to the time that I died and full memory from the time I came out of the tank until. Now, Vien Chronicler had an issue with that the Mars native women go topless. So he did his best to cover her up.
oh, they do in reality go topless?
They do in reality go topless. It's part of their religion. They are a matriarchal culture, and they honor the breasts as the givers of life because milk comes through them. And they're a very spiritual and innocent kind of a people. And of course, the Mars Germans and the American soldiers looked on them lustfully, and a lot of their women have been raped. And so whenever these people see any Earth humans, they just will pack up their entire village and move. They want nothing to do with us. And I can't say that I blame them.
I can't say that I would blame them either. Why is it that Earth humans think it's okay to rape women? I don't get it.
They do it here. They're not being any different there. But it's the way it's, yeah, it's horrific, but it is still what is done. And this is pretty much what they look like. If
They
you're
would look like Southwest Indians.
and this was one of the drawings I got him to have a more natural dirt color. So this is more like what Mars really looks like. So, but yeah, we don't know what they're making their clothing out of, because whatever it is, they grow it in their villages underground.
I was just going to say that. They have to live underground like everybody else, right?
They have to live underground just like all other humans, and the Mantids and the raptors live above ground. So,
They're pretty rough and tough then,
yeah,
exterior-wise.
they are very much adapted to Mars.
So how do they get sunlight? They don't get sunlight? How do you live underground without any sun?
They come out in the daytime.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But if you're growing things underground, you have to have a power source and a light source for your crops.
Yeah, so how do they do that?
And a way to melt the water. Almost all the water on Mars is underground and frozen. So you have to mine it and then melt it. And it's considered to be a fossil. So one of the conditions that the Draco put on us was that we only could take what we were using, and that we had to recycle what we used, so that we were only taking a little bit, because once that water is gone, it's gone. So
it's not replenished in any manner, shape, or form.
There is some surface water, there is some rain, there's some snow in the winter, but it's not enough to support more than it supports what natively survived the disasters in the past. I'm going to go to the next photo, next drawing. This was the second ship that I had. The first one was like an F-15. This was the second one, and it's in between a military plane and a shuttle. And it was camouflaged. Most of the Mars militia wore shades of orange or brown.
So you'd blend right in?
So you'd blend right in. They wore a lot of camo, and the ships were camouflaged so they would blend in. And this is he based this off of, I don't know if you know Ileana, the Star Traveler. She's a friend of mine, and she interviewed me about this, and she did what she calls remote viewing my memory, and she came up with this ship design based on pulling it out of my own memories.
I didn't know people could do that.
I didn't either until she told me she had done it.
Wow, that's amazing. Where's she from?
She was born in Ukraine, and she's in Canada now, and she served on Mars the Germans call them bakers in space, but she says they're called planetary corporations. It's what Eisenhower called the military-industrial complex. They have their own faction in space.
Oh, wow, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
She served with them.
Ah, okay.
So
So she was a
that's,
super soldier too.
yeah, there's lots of us. My most conservative guesstimate is that there are at least 2 million of us
Holy
running
smokes.
around on the planet who have served in one faction or another. So
Are there some that don't remember or don't recall?
none of us were supposed to. So those of us who remember, it's because something failed. In my case, an agent from another spy group decided to activate my memory. It was an agent from the NSA who activated mine in 2013. So my $1 million question is, why the hell did they do that to me?
For disclosure?
Apparently it was time and they figured I would do it.
Yeah.
So, but you see, our uniform flight suit was in between a spacesuit and a regular flight suit, and there were hoses attached for when the helmet was on. And
you didn't need a helmet on there? Like right now, if you
you,
were standing right there, you didn't need a helmet?
not in the daytime, no. You can breathe the air. You just can't run fast. It's like being in the high mountains. But once you get used to it, you get used to it. You know, it's like living at 7,000 foot elevation.
Oh, okay. So there's an acclimation period.
There's an acclimation period, and you know, you get used to it.
So what did you eat up there? What kind of food was there?
We had a garden underground. It was hydroponics, and we grew salads and some root vegetables, not a lot. Mostly top things. We had food recyclers, which were not fun. At the beginning, they were really bad at it, and the food tasted terrible. But what they do is you only digest 10% of what's in your food, so they were going through and separating out the food items from the poop. And
Ew.
then using something that was basically a 3D printer to print something new. And at first, they were not very good at it, and it tasted terrible, but over time, it got acceptable. They also had prepackaged foods from the colonies, and some of those were really good.
Wow, I wondered about that. So would that be, we've had talk about a replicator on other shows. Would that be something similar?
A replicator is a further extension of that technology.
Okay.
And by the time they got to the replicator stage, that was after 2000. After they got to that stage, they were just anything that you didn't want anymore, anything, worn uniform, worn out uniforms, boots that had holes in them, whatever. Everything went into the recycler to become food again. Or you could set it to become a new uniform or a new pair of boots or whatever.
Oh, okay, yes. Droik has talked about that sort of thing, and
Yeah.
he talks about that being offered to people on Earth at some point from ET groups.
I'll tell you, there are 3 technologies that if we had them on Earth today, everything would be different. One is the 0-point energy. On Mars, we were using the idea that Tesla had about pulling it out of the air, only what we were actually doing was taking energy from the planetary rotation.
Oh.
And we were using that, and we were using so much of it that the command structure had to have a meeting because it was slowing down the planet's orbit we were using.
My goodness.
So
that could cause problems, I assume.
That can cause problems if your day is suddenly getting longer and you know? It's not so bad if it's warmer in the daytime, but if it's nights are longer, you have a problem. So, but if we had the free energy source that they have in the programs, any of the programs, because each of them has a different technology, but they all have a 0-point energy. If we had the medical technology, the regen tanks of the Germans or the holographic beds of the Americans, either one, both of them will cure anything you've got going. Anything.
Why are they kept from humanity on Earth?
Because they tell us we've got too many of us, that we're useless eaters. They want 80% of us dead. Why would they fix what's wrong with us? Seriously.
Yeah, well, seriously, who are those people, and why are they so arrogant and pompous about everything, the elite crap?
They think they're in charge of the planet, and they think that they have the right to do whatever they want. And none of us have told them no yet.
That's a problem, isn't it?
It's a major problem. The other technology is replicators. So if you have all the energy needs met, and you have all the medical needs met, and you have everybody's food, clothing, shelter needs met, at that point you can become a level 0 galactic civilization, which is what the galaxy wants us to do.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm all for it.
Every time I bring it up, I keep it being told, well, that's socialism.
How is that socialism?
Because you're taking care of everybody, whether they deserve it or not.
Ooh, that's a self-righteous statement right there, isn't it?
Exactly. So I'm looking at it from, we could have 3 technologies that are used in every faction in space, and we could use whatever variant of it we wanted to, because they all serve the same functions. But there are 6 factions in space, each with their own technology set that does the same thing. And take it from any one of them and bring it to Earth, and we could have heaven on Earth for everybody.
That's what I want. I'm all in favor of that. Maybe getting this information out is a really good thing in that, because Drake talks about that too. And if we could just get it released and take down the power elite that think they're better than everybody else.
Well, my understanding was that the power elite thought that they were going to move out into their own colonies and play God there, and that they were going to leave us behind and possibly blow the place up on their way out.
I heard something to that.
Under the guise of fulfilling prophecy, because everybody has an end of the world program.
Doom and gloom, yeah.
Yeah, so my understanding from my guardians, the ones who have been watching me for a while, is that the door was shut and the elite cannot leave, that they are going to be stuck with whatever future they demand for the rest of us. So that was a big shock for them. It was also a big shock for them when their god Baphonet the Draco was tried for violation of the Prime and convicted and executed in November 2018.
So he is gone. Baphomet is gone. And he was Draco.
He was Draco. The real ET that they thought was a god is now executed. So his followers have been used to him giving them whatever they wanted in exchange for adrenochrome for literally thousands of years. And now he's gone, and they don't know what to do to keep their power.
Right.
That's why we're seeing some of the chaos that we're seeing now.
Mhm. What about
And
Lucifer?
Lucifer is an angel.
Okay.
He got in trouble for defending humanity when with the flood. Seriously, that's what he's in trouble for. He didn't want us killed.
That doesn't make sense. No.
Nothing in the official story makes sense. It's when you start talking to them that you find out the real story.
So if Lucifer is an angel,
Uh-huh.
isn't that who the Illuminati worship? Am I?
No, the Illuminati.
Who's?
The Illuminati are,
I'm confused now.
well, there are like 30 different groups calling themselves Illuminati, and each one has a different theology.
Each one?
Uh-huh.
Wow.
So it's like, who are you talking about?
They're not all Satanists?
Nope. They're all occultists, but they're not all Satanists. And most of them don't even kill anybody.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, you're educating me on that one.
So it's been trippy doing the research, trying to figure out who was who and who I was supposed to be exposing. Because from what I can tell, it's the group that involved the owl.
I was just going to say Moloch.
It's the ones that worship Baphomet and the ones that worship Moloch are the ones I'm supposed to be exposing.
Okay.
Now, I don't know exactly what they are calling themselves is part of my problem. So I can't point the finger and say that group because I haven't found their names yet. But if they're using adrenochrome,
So
if they're using human sacrifice, those are the ones we want gotten rid of.
we definitely need to get rid of them.
Now, at least stop what they're doing.
Yes, the very minimal. Yeah.
The very minimum, stop what they're doing. So,
So what's the status of Moloch?
my understanding from the Guardians is that he is arrested and awaiting trial.
So there was an actual being, just like with Baphomet.
He was an Anunnaki, yes. These are actual ETs in physical bodies. They just have very long lifespans compared to humans.
And they take advantage of that fact.
They were taking advantage of that fact and presenting themselves as gods when they're not. And we were gullible enough to fall for it. And their psionic abilities and tech made it where they could deliver on their promises. So their followers were getting exactly what they were asking for if they came up with the goods. And the goods were adrenochrome.
Which required tortured and raped children.
So, yeah.
Very disturbing.
And as long as it was humans doing it to other humans, the galaxy could not do anything to the ETs involved.
Oh, how convenient.
But they screwed up and got caught.
How did that happen?
There was a new legal theory put forward that in verbal societies like ours, that pre-verbal children say no by kicking and screaming.
They do.
They do. And that was put forward in court and was the basis for Baphomet's conviction and is the basis for Moloch's pending trial.
Which will probably be a conviction as well, I'm sure.
I certainly hope so.
I do too.
They tried to convict Marduk,
Mhm.
and he sat there through the whole trial, and his was almost 2 years long. And he sat there through the whole thing crying like a baby, convinced them that he was repentant. So they fitted him with a bomb in his head, and the first time that he relapses, they'll explode his head.
How long ago did his trial that resulted in that happen? Excuse me.
He was the one after Baphomet. So his Baphomet was in November 2018. Marduk's ended in April, I think.
Was Marduk detained for a while before he went to trial? Is that how it works?
Yeah, they pick them up and they wait their turn.
Now,
Anu is under trial now for allowing Marduk to get out of hand and for his own issues, and Moloch is next.
who was after Moloch, do you know?
No, I don't.
Yeah. Enlil, you told me Enlil was executed. Is that correct?
Enlil was executed. He was picked up with a group of others, and they were so rude during their arraignment that they were all executed then. There was a group of 10 of them.
Wow. Too pompous and arrogant, huh?
Mm-hmm.
And what about Enki?
Enki made a deal.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
Enki made a deal to testify against the others.
Oh,
And
a canary.
and to help fix the mess. And if he doesn't follow through on both, then he gets executed.
Wow.
The galaxy isn't very forgiving. If they know you're guilty and they can prove you're guilty, the options are you're proven innocent, which if they know you're guilty, it ain't going to happen.
Mhm.
If you're guilty, you're executed. If you're guilty but repentant, you're fitted with a bomb in your head, and when you relapse, you're executed then. That's what the galaxy does.
Wow. So in what way would Enki make up for what he's done? I mean,
He's a very powerful being.
uh-huh.
He's perfectly capable of coming and fixing things if he wants to. It doesn't take much to manipulate culture.
Wasn't he the scientist and geneticist in the
Yes. He was the only Anunnaki Shahami whose sperm worked with the
humans?
humans. So he's technically our father. And he was attached to us like a father and did not want us dead.
That's why I always thought he had some saving grace.
He has a little bit of saving grace, and I was both he and Thoth made deals. So
Tell me about Thoth.
Thoth's real name is Nengish Zida, and he is the third Jahami son of Enki, and he's an artist, musician, mystic. He's like Loki in that you cannot trust him. He will he would throw his mother under the bridge if he thought it would service him. So
Wow. Okay. But he was able to make a deal.
he was able to make a deal.
But he would have a bomb plant in his head too, correct?
And he's currently the new king of their planet.
Which
Because
is Nibiru?
they call it Shahami, but humans have been calling it Nibiru. And that's real. And he has been, the other king was killed in August 2018. So he's been king since September 28, 2018.
Wow.
And it's trippy sitting back and watching this stuff.
Yeah, really. And you get firsthand knowledge and information.
Yeah, well, I sit in the court. It's one of the places I'm taken is to the courtroom that is in a hyperspace bubble off of Jupiter. And so I sit in the court, and my function there is similar to a bailiff. So I'm sitting there watching these trials. So yeah, I know what's going on because I'm sitting in the court watching it.
Wow. So are you, is this court look anything like the courts we have here?
No,
Or is it totally
more
different?
like it's circular, and the judges are facing one way, and there's a screen on the other side, so everybody sees what's going on.
So
And you have a clip, and it is like a Bluetooth and just sitting there, that everything's translated into your language for you, for the ones that are not telepathic. And it's
fascinating.
run very oddly. On Earth, they argue all the details of the law, and in their court, that's considered to be lying. Yeah.
I think there was an attorney out there that wrote a book called License to Lie, so maybe there's some truth in that.
You know, it's considered that everybody knows what the law means, and that it means what it means, and trying to argue it means something else just is lying. And lying is an admission of guilt.
Ah, okay.
So they go about it very childlike and simplistic, and they go through with each individual victim is what takes so long. And because they're in hyperspace, they can pull the victims out of time to testify.
Wow. That's fascinating. Who are the judges?
They're the Council of Five, which is a specific group of ETs that are in charge of Earth. And they're in charge of justice for the solar system. And they specifically deal with bullshit ETs do here. And they have nothing to do with what humans do to each other. That's an internal matter. So think of it like the feds coming in. They have no jurisdiction over local matters. So if someone from another state comes in, the feds have jurisdiction. If someone here does it, they don't. So they have jurisdiction over ETs messing with humans on Earth.
Thank goodness. Took them a while.
Not over humans doing it. Well, it was a human that suggested that pre-verbal children say no by kicking and screaming, because the law is, if you don't say no, you've said yes. So all the adults or older children had all been drugged, so they couldn't say no.
How is that fair? I
It's
mean,
not fair. It's not fair at all. But it's the way their law operates. So these perps had thought they had found a loophole. And so to prosecute, we had to find another loophole. So it is what it is.
what ET races are you able to say are on the Council of Five? I mean, is it Andromedans? Is it, Arcturians?
I have a list somewhere. Let me see if I can pull that up. Wrong thing. Okay.
So basically, humans have to clean up their own mess.
Humans have to clean up their own mess, yes.
That's exactly what Drake has always said.
We have to clean up our own mess. So.
And deal with the people that have been perpetrating a lot of this very dark activity.
Exactly. But people want to have some, they want to have some hero come in and swoop down and clean it all up for them, where that they can just continue living their lives the way they want to.
We still have that problem, people not participating and just sitting back and waiting for somebody else to do it, or expecting Trump to be able to do everything. And
yeah. Well, yeah. Aren't you trusting the plan? I'm sorry. I'm not a trust anybody else kind of woman. I'm a get out there and do it. Okay, I'm going to share the screen. This assemblage of pictures came from the KGB book of ETs, and some of them are not real clear.
Okay.
So keep that in mind.
Okay. I'm sure people would like to see them.
Okay. These are the 5 races. And they are the Arella, the Agarot, Ginvo, Redan, and Immerther.
Oh.
And as you can see, 4 of them pretty much look like grays. The Redan look kind of like us. But those are the judges at the Galactic Authority Court that's just off of Jupiter.
Fascinating.
So.
Cool. Thank you for sharing that. It's nice to know that.
You're welcome. But yeah, those are folks that I deal with one of the groups that take me. So
I've got a question from a friend of mine who had experienced seeing an ET at the foot of her bed, had the big eyes, kind of that typical ET type face with the big eyes, but was totally green. Do you know of a race that might be?
there are thousands of those kinds of races.
That are green?
And they do come in different colors. There's greens and blues and purples. Not just the gray or muddy brown that most of them are depicted as. And most of the races that we call gray started off as basically human, and they survived nuclear wars on their planet. That is the usual genetic damage done by a nuclear war.
Wow.
Now, there are a few of those races who actually are a different biology. There's one group that has a mushroom physiology.
Sure.
And then there's a group that we worked with on Mars. They eat through their skin. They absorb it through their skin, and then they poop it out through their skin, and they stink to high heaven. And
Interesting.
they're very smart, and the Germans sometimes have to use them as pilots because not everybody has the ability to go into hyperspace and take physical objects with them. And we got tired of the smell and started using cleaning products on them. And that's how we found out that cleaning products make them drunk.
Make them drunk?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. That's
Cleaning
amazing.
products make them drunk. So, but you think about it, it makes sense, because anything that makes you high, stoned, drunk is actually a poison. So, you're using something on them that's basically stripping their digestive system.
Yeah, if they eat through their skin. And
That can't be real healthy.
no, not at all.
But we used ammonia on them on a regular basis because it didn't stink as bad as they did.
Oh, so ammonia smells better than they did?
Uh-huh. That was pretty disgusting. So, but most ships that go through hyperspace are piloted by an ET. Usually a gray or a Draco, because they're the most friendly to humans. But,
Dracos are friendly to humans?
They're more friendly to humans than a lot of other races.
Oh, okay.
We're considered a threat to the galaxy.
That makes me sad, you know that?
It makes me sad, but I can see their point too, because I've seen the other side. I've seen how nasty we are in war, and how every faction I've been a part of takes prisoners and turns them into cyborgs and sells them to other ETs. You go through and you're doing a job for the Draco, and you have to make a profit on it. We're pretty nasty out there.
How is it out there as far as, the other races? Obviously, we have the human race that is caught up on, profit, money, and it's a scourge on our planet as far as I'm concerned. How do other races handle that? How is it? Do they have money system?
Most of the races that have a money system are considered to be slave races.
Figures. That's why it was created in the first place.
Yeah, that's why it was created in the first place. Money goes with slave systems. And most of the systems out there are level 1 or higher galactic civilizations, and each individual has a credit system that's basically equal for everybody, and it covers the things that are not automatically given you. Like if you want to collect books or something,
Mm-hmm. So that's what scares people, is the idea that if we went to something on that order, that they think that's socialism.
They think it's socialism because they've never worked with something that worked with humans that was about everybody getting a fair share. Because humans are by nature greedy. You don't want just what you need, you want enough to make sure you're secure. And we're acquisitive, and most of us have a tendency to hoard something.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you start saying everybody has to share equally, you look at it and you go, I'm going to lose everything that I've collected.
I worked harder for this, or I deserve more than that person. They don't. What do they contribute? Ideas like that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of self-righteousness in there.
We have a real problem on this planet with hierarchy.
Yes.
And I've been calling it pecking order slavery because everybody all the way up to the elites are caught in this trap. It's a pecking order slavery where even the ones at the top are slaves to somebody else. The ones on the top are slaves to their ET masters. And some of them, their ET masters have been executed and they don't even know what's going on. Sorry, I have somebody at the door.
Oh, okay.
So, you have elites that are answering to ETs that they've been serving for thousands of years, and everybody below them is at another lower level of slavery. Until you get down to, we actually have slaves, lots of them on Earth. And you have this whole problem of a range of human trafficking that starts with aborted baby parts and goes into toddlers used for adrenochrome and young kids used for the space program, and all the way through they're used for sex, and older they're used for labor. And then you get to the oldest people who are dying of cancer, and somebody comes and makes them a deal. Well, if you let us have your body, you can live forever. And they regenerate them and turn them into a cyborg. No, they don't have cancer anymore. No, they're not in pain anymore, but they're trapped inside a machine for the next 600 years. So and then they're sold to an ET for who knows what. And this is what is the underlying mess that everything else is resting on. And I'm saying that is what we have to stop. The whole pecking order slavery. What was done to me is just part of the problem. And when you start looking into details, it's really amazingly overwhelming. But the one chink in the armor that I have found is the CIA, who is responsible for most of it, is supposed to be supervised by Congress.
How can we trust Congress when you look into what?
We can't trust them to do anything. But
they all been bought.
The point is, there is someone they are accountable to. And if these people want to be reelected, honestly, they may be reelected anyway because they're controlling who counts the votes. But if they want to be reelected honestly, they're still answerable to the voters.
Yeah, right now, people supposedly, vote them in, even though the voting has been proven to be rigged over and over again.
Yeah.
But the fact is that they aren't doing anything really to speak of for the people. They're mostly doing for themselves.
I've been doing that my whole life. It's not anything new.
Exactly.
But
how do we stop it?
Once in a while, you can put a fire under them and get them to do something. You remember the Church Commission in 1975?
No, not really.
It was a Senate investigation into MKUltra.
Oh. I don't know if I knew about that at that in that year.
It made a major difference in how the victims were treated by the CIA. It did. It made a major difference in how the kids were treated. There was an immediate change from total mind control. They left me with 2,200 alters, and they killed 80% of the kids they took at the same time in the first year. They're no longer doing that because of the Church Commission. So that made a difference.
Didn't they regenerate those kids that they killed?
They regenerated them until they got to the point where the child's mind gave up. And at that point, regeneration didn't work anymore. They were just bringing back a catatonic child. So at that point, they just tossed them into the incinerator.
Oh my God.
So this is what they did to 80% of the kids they took with me when I was 4.
What happens to their consciousness then?
Well, if they're actually dead, they get to come back, but they're really damaged by this. So you've got a bunch of kids reincarnating that are just really terribly damaged.
I imagine the ones that have been found underground in tunnels and so on are quite damaged as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if they're being run by the same people, for sure.
Are you aware of there actually being any rescuing going on in that regard?
I've heard a lot of rumors. I haven't seen any evidence.
You haven't seen any evidence?
No, I've not seen any hardcore evidence. Nothing that you could take to court. I've just heard rumors.
Okay. That's discouraging.
It is. What's even more discouraging is that all these arrests, I have never seen perps go to prison. I have only seen witnesses go to prison for perjury. So
some of these people that have been, well, they have an ankle bracelet, or they have, or appears that they do, or what have you. As far as you are aware, they have not been, like Tom Hanks, for example, has not been executed.
as far as I know, they've not been executed, except possibly McCain, because he actually was buried. But Tom Hanks and his wife recently got citizenship in Greece, where pedophilia is considered a mental illness instead of a crime.
Well, I thought he was responsible for deaths and people. But anyway.
Well, if it's a mental illness, he won't even be investigated there.
Wow, I didn't know that about Greece. That's kind of sickening.
Well, Congress is looking at a law right now. It hasn't passed yet, but it's being discussed, that would make pedophilia just another sexual preference.
That's bullshit. I'm sorry, but I'm going to just call it like I see it. That is bullshit. No child should.
Well, I agree. But they're just covering their own asses.
Exactly.
So the time has come to clean house. And in my personal opinion, anyone that is CFR should be banned from serving in Congress.
Definitely.
The Council on Foreign Relations has no business being in Congress at all.
I agree. I don't like the idea of having dual citizenship either.
Not with anybody.
Exactly.
If you're in American government, you should be an American. Period.
I said that at the same time. Yep. I agree with you 100%.
Anything else gives you a conflict of interest. If it came down to a war between the two countries you're citizenship with, who are you going to be most loyal to? That's a conflict of interest. That should not be allowed in Congress. That should not be allowed in the military. And those people who have enlisted in the military with the promise of being given American citizenship should get it.
Right, I agree. The other thing in the military that bothers me is that a soldier should not be used as pincushions or, and you know what I mean by that.
Guinea pigs.
Guinea pigs on all kinds of products created by Big Pharma for them to be a guinea pig. No more than that. And many of them have been damaged and hurt by that. It's just not right.
The Gulf War stuff.
Yeah.
That turned out to be radiation damage because they were using uranium-238 left over from weapons as bullet casings. And when they used those bullets in warfare, the bullets would disintegrate and have created such a radiation problem that Iraq has huge areas, including Fallujah, where there are so many deformed babies that the women are being told to not have kids. If that's not genocide, I don't know what we should call it. So
Scared me.
yeah, there's a lot of crap going on. A lot of crap going on. And people need to wake up and smell the coffee.
Exactly.
There is a war on normal people. And sitting back waiting for the plan to save you is just going to get you killed.
I guess they don't really believe it. They don't really...
No, they think it's just fear porn.
And it's...
or a game.
It's already... everything's a conspiracy theory. You know, the CIA created that word, and it has been so abused, it's pathetic.
Yeah. I've investigated a lot of conspiracy theories over the last 2 decades. And more so since I've been on the internet, and it's been easier. Mm-hmm. I would say 80% of them have been correct, and that the other 20% have been based on theories that made sense, even if they didn't end up being correct.
Mm-hmm. I guess I've said to people sometimes, oh, that, you know, everything's a conspiracy theory. I said, it's not a conspiracy when it's a fact.
Yeah. It's not a theory when it's a fact. If you can prove it, it's not a theory.
Exactly.
And, you know, when they tell you their goal is to eliminate all but 500 million people, you should believe them because they mean it.
Exactly.
And they put it right on the Georgia Guidestones.
Exactly. You know what? It appears that there was a sacrifice on the top of the Georgia Guidestones.
Really?
I got a photograph of the very top, and it looks like blood.
I haven't seen it from that angle. I have been there to check it out, and you know,
I'll send you the picture I have.
The county it's in goes through and removes the graffiti on a regular basis.
Well, isn't that nice of them? They apparently they don't think that they're going to be one of the ones that are killed, right?
Apparently not. So
I don't understand people sometimes. I really don't. Sometimes I don't think I'm from this planet.
I pay attention and watch things go down, and I talk about it, and people tell me I'm crazy. And 6 months to a year later, I'm proven right. And so people start following me on Facebook, and then they want to argue with me because they wanted to follow me because I was right. No, it can't be that. It can't be that. Well, when you've decided that they're out to kill you, and you're just looking at how many how many paths they're working on, you know.
Oh my God, yes. And
Yeah,
with vaccine, you know what
it's food with GMOs and additives. It's
Right.
water with fluoride and now lithium. It's air with chemtrails. They call it stratospheric injections. So if you're going to look up chemtrails on Google, call it a stratospheric injection, and you'll come up with all the science.
Geoengineering, I think you can get it with that too.
It's not as complete.
It's not as good as.
It's not as good.
Okay.
The stratospheric injection, I got that from one of the high mucky muck military people during the Obama administration.
Interesting, because I did a show about 3 years ago on chemtrails, and I was called a conspiracy theorist, of course. And I'm going, you think those stripes were always in the sky like that?
Yeah, Harold.
Cotsbella?
Yes.
I love that guy. Yeah.
Yeah, I have. I'll
have to have him on again.
I have shared his things from Miles Johnston so many times because he tells it like it is.
Yes.
And
so do you. So do you, Penny, and that's why I appreciate you. And
thank you. I figure they're going to kill me anyway. I might as well speak the truth.
Well, I hope that doesn't happen. I hope you're protected by the Guardians. And
I have been shot 10 times with energy weapons. And I don't know why I'm here today. And last year when the CIA broke my shoulder, they said, we don't know why you're still alive. We've just figured out we can't kill you, but we can make you hurt. So they broke my shoulder. I've had reconstruction surgery. I've had physical therapy, and I can lift it to about here.
I'm so sorry.
And I have to take pain meds to sleep at night. And so I know eventually they are going to make me so disabled I can't do this anymore. And until then, I'm going to keep talking.
Good. Well, you can keep talking on my show, Penny.
Thank you.
We'll get the information out there. Oh my goodness, hang on, sorry. Sorry about that.
That sounded like Skype.
It was a friend of mine. I'll have to talk to him later. He's didn't expect that to happen.
The public needs to know Mars is livable. Mars has other races there, but there are 10 million Germans there, plus Americans, and that every faction in space uses Mars for their basic training.
So does Mars, the Americans that are on Mars, are they from the secret space program or Space Force now? How did they get there?
They are from the Department of Defense's space program, which has been going on since the 1980s. Or they are from Solar Warden, which is a separate program. What Trump called Space Force used to be called Earth Defense Force, and it was part of the Air Force. The American space programs are through the Navy.
Ah, okay.
So none of those have been declassified yet. But Randy Kramer was from the DoD Space Marines, and some of the others, I've done interviews with Kevin, I blanked on his last name. Kevin is a Canadian, and he's no longer in the community because of death threats. And he was specifically told to not talk to me anymore. But he was in Solar Warden, and Michael Gerloff was a Earth-level Marine who has memories of being transferred to the Space Marines, and he has a document for, yeah, he actually has paper proof. The only one I know of. And he's not doing interviews because he's sitting home writing a book.
Okay. I thought you were going to tell me he was threatened. It seems as though people are being allowed to...
I blank on names because they go through and mind wipe the names. So even when I'm on Earth, I have trouble remembering people's names. So there was another one. I did one round table with him. He was from a military branch, U.S. military, who served under the Germans in space. Rice, Jason Rice.
Okay.
He was on Gaia. Tony Rodriguez is on Gaia, and he is a longtime friend of mine. He and I were friends when we both went public at the same time.
Oh, wow.
And he was picked up as a child and put through satanic ritual slavery until he got to an age where they no longer considered him usable, and he was turned over to the Germans in space as a slave. And since I was one of those German officers, I have apologized to him deeply for how he was treated.
When you're a slave, what do they make you do on other planets like Mars or whatever? What are you...
Manual labor.
Manual labor.
Okay, the reason is a machine can do one job. But if you want it to change that job at all, you have to reprogram it, which requires a human. And if you want it to be capable of doing 5 or 6 jobs, you have to reprogram it in between each one. Where if they're all manual labor, a human can do it.
Okay.
And a lot of the people that are used as slaves in space are on 20 and backs because they're in prison.
Say that again. They're what?
They're in prison on Earth. So these prisoners that come out and they have a completely weird attitude and PTSD and all kinds of things. Some of them have been abducted and used in space as slaves, slave labor.
Wow.
I told you, this is pervasive. It goes through all the layers. It's pecking order slavery. If you look at the Bill of Rights, the 13th Amendment didn't really get rid of slavery. It just said if you're in prison, you're a slave. Anywhere else, you're not supposed to be. It authorized slavery if you're in prison. That was the basis for the Jim Crow laws. That's the basis for the way the prison system is run now. And it's the basis for these prisoners being taken for 20 bucks and used as slaves in space.
Oh my God, that's very interesting that that came up, because I'm going to say something, and I was informed about a prison in northern Alabama that is currently injecting and forcing pills on the women there, and they're getting sick. They're being used as a guinea pig with no rights or anything. I don't know what that's all about. I just know that it's something that needs to be investigated, and I hope
It does.
I hope it gets.
There's a lot of things being done in the prison systems that should not be. There's a lot of forced sterilizations. There's a lot of women who come in pregnant and their babies die, except they didn't. They were given out.
Yeah.
They were taken for various things.
This could be a sterilization thing, or it could be testing a drug, or any number of things. But I don't think any human, I don't care who they are or if they're in prison or what they did, they still should have human rights, basic human rights. And
Exactly.
It's their body, and they should be able to say no. And
I agree.
how do we fix that?
I personally think we are to the point that the people are going to have to demand justice, that people are going to have to demand human rights, and nothing is surrendered without a fight.
And people have to learn how to say no.
That's the first thing. You have to learn to say no.
No, I'm not going to wear a mask. No, I'm not going to get a vaccination. No, you're not going to, blah, 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 blah. But anyway,
They have to learn to say no. They
It's a
have to
backbone.
learn to go into a movie, watch it, and come out and say, oh, hell no, I don't consent to that.
Exactly.
So,
Anyway, Penny, I think we're probably running up on time here.
yeah, I felt like I've been chasing rabbits. Hopefully they're interesting rabbits to everyone else.
They are very interesting rabbits, and I appreciate.
I want to say something to your listeners, because I did get the question about a specific German person from World War II. I have not done research into World War II Germany on purpose, because my experience was not with those people. My experience was with the aristocracy who left those people behind. And so I have trouble recognizing names anyway, because they keep mind erasing those. So if you're going to ask about a specific German officer, I can't give you an answer. I just don't know. So I thought I would make sure that you guys understood that.
Thank you, Penny. Thank you. I think people appreciate that, and I appreciate your honesty, and that's important. And there's a difference between the Nazis and the group that you work with.
Yes.
Big difference.
The group that I worked with were Teutonic Knights. They're not any nicer, but they are different.
They're not any nicer, but they're different. Okay. They have some saving grace, I hope. German engineering, no.
They're humans. Of course, they have redeeming qualities.
I'm just being facetious. So
It's just everybody has blind spots. They just have a different one.
yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much. And
Thank you for
I
having
will
me.
have you back next week. I was thinking about possibly changing the day, but I'll talk to you after the show about that.
Okay.
And thank you, and thank you everyone for listening. And I really appreciate you a great deal, Penny. You're teaching a lot of things that are very important people need to know. Thank you.